On this episode of Two Dudes, One Cart, John and I sit down with Micheal Leonard of Wicked Smart Golf. So sit back, relax, grab your notepads and pens, and enjoy this edition of the Two Dudes, One Cart podcast. And as always, thank you for listening. All right, everybody. No John. John's stuck at work. Most of you guys know John loves to work. So we are lucky enough to be joined by Micheal Leonard of Wicked Smart Golf. Micheal, how you doing today?
Doing well, man. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, how's the weather where you're at?
It's hot. I'm in Arizona, so it's just either hot or hotter. And we're actually coming into like the colder time, so it's only like 95 to still it's like 75, 80 in the morning. It's still a little warm. So it's been a pretty mellow year. Last year we had 45 days of 110 degrees and in a row. That was a terrible record to have. So it's been much better than last year. So it's all about having the right perspective.
Yeah, we are currently, I played golf on Sunday and played about the first 4 or 5 holes with a pullover on already.
Dang.
So it's nice. We're in that spot where it's fall. Like today it got up 85, I think, and then we have those days so we know what's coming. So keep it in mind. Try not to rub it into most of our audience so that you're coming into kind of the zone of your weather, right?
We kind of are, but it's unfortunate at times the timing of it because in October every course closes for 2 to 3 weeks for overseed, and then when
Right.
it comes back, then it's cart path only for like another 3 weeks. So it's kind of like 6 weeks, and then by the time that kicks in, then you get all the out of staters coming in, and then all the prices double. So it's a definitely a first world problem, but it's a little annoying sometimes. They don't have any Arizona local rates for us. They're like, nah, you're just paying what everybody else is.
Oh man, now I didn't know that. I guess
So if you
that's
do want to
being
come to Arizona, I would stay away typically in October just because every course is going to be closed at least 2 3 weeks.
yeah, it's wild that we took about I think we had 8 guys and we went to Palm Springs
Nice.
and we went in January, which was great. Weather was great. But it's odd for a Midwesterner to figure out that like in that June, those months, they're just closed
Hmm.
because it's so hot. They can't water. There's not much they can do. And I'm like,
Yeah, it
what?
gets it gets really hot out in Palm Desert there.
Yeah, we're kind of like, what? That's our go-to months, for us. And
Right.
to know they shut down for that was pretty crazy. But Michael, why don't you give our listeners kind of the 20,000 foot view of your background and what you do and how you've I mean, you've created a career around mindset and performance and kind of how you got to where you are today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I've just been a golf addict since I was about 10 years old, and I'm 38 now, so it's been nearly 3 decades of being obsessed with the game. And I loved it in high school, played a little bit in college, and then got a little distracted with other things in college, and I kind of gave up the college golf dream and took some time off. Went in the corporate world, climbed the ladder, did all the things I was supposed to do, society told me, and I was just like, man, I feel like there's something else I need to try out. And I just always liked entrepreneurship and always loved golf, and I was kind of starting to get into playing again a lot more. And all of a sudden, I was hitting it a lot further than I was when I was in college, and just really fell in love with the challenge of it. And all of a sudden, I got to scratch pretty quick and started to kind of shooting in the 70s, low 70s, and I was like, man, this is pretty good, And then I had to get in some tournaments, and then I caught the bug even more once I got back into the tournaments. And I was kind of just at a place where in my career I was looking for something new, and I always wanted to get into entrepreneurship, but didn't really know exactly what that looked like. So I just saved as much money as I could, and basically played golf as much as I could, and told myself, gave my notice to my boss in 2017. And I would never forget. He's like, "What are you gonna do?" Because I had a blog at the time, made a couple $100. Like it was not doing much, and I was doing really well at this company. And I just told him, I was like, "Well, I'm gonna, try and build an online business that inspires the world and pursue professional golf, or maybe we'll get lucky and get a little bit of both." And the pro golf dream didn't work out, but did go to Q school, have played in hundreds and hundreds of days of tournaments, and now have a really cool golf business. So it's fun how it all kind of worked out. I put it out in the universe in 2017, and here we are, 2025. So I think it's just one of those times where I like to look back and had to take a risk and didn't know what I was doing for a lot of years and still learning a lot. But yeah, just ultimately now I'm obsessed with helping other golfers speed up success with my mental golf coaching and podcasts and books, just trying to gain awareness out there and topics that most players don't think about or even, know about, from the, mental piece to routines to course management, short game. I just felt like, to me, when I was kind of going through it as a freelance writer, I was always helping all these other companies write about swing changes, and every YouTube video is about a swing change, and you got to do this, you got to do that. But I always thought I didn't have the most orthodox swing, and I got to scratch and plus handicaps, and I was like, maybe it's not as important as we think. I think there's a lot more of course management and mental stuff that we need to talk about. And I love Boston movies, and so I had the idea to go with Wicked Smart, and I was able to put it together. And it's been a little over 3 years since we started.
Man, that's great. I love when I hear those kind of stories, that when people just, you've got an idea and you just take off with it. It's kind of just one of those things, you just got to jump and give it a shot. Was there a particular moment or around when you were on the golf course that you just thought that, my game's not going to take me there, or something in you that just kind of realized how important the mental side was to golf and the overall scheme of playing good golf?
Yeah, I think it was actually kind of because I, played a couple years in college. I was an absolute head case. I mean, slamming clubs and just breaking stuff, screaming. I was an absolute, like, total. This all kind of started from that. I think the real reason, like, if I didn't just connect the dots yet, but in my college tryout, I was in front of the college coach. I was playing with him and a couple of players. We had the men's and women's team right behind us. First tee box. I flew down from Oregon with my dad. I'm going to try out for this team. And I just dead topped this shot. I get the chills just thinking about it, because I was 17 years old. I thought my whole life was over. I went on to play the worst round of golf you could imagine. Obviously didn't get a scholarship. And it was one of those moments where I was just like one of those Southwest commercials, it's like, want to get away. Like, I just would have paid anything to leave that situation. And I was 17, so this prefrontal was not nearly developed, and maybe it is now, but it took a while to get there. And I look back on it then, and I just wish I could tell that kid, like, hey, you're going to be a mental golf coach. You're actually going to use this story and inspire others with it. So I think that's one of those moments where I started to understand it, but I didn't know the information was out there, and it really wasn't talked about very much. So when I got back into golf in 2015, 2016, that's when I was really diving into all the, Dr. Bob Rotella stuff. And even then there wasn't a ton of information out there. I mean, looking to where it is now. And so I just consumed as much as I could, and I started just piecing together and just little things about strategy and where we're teeing up at, and why are we going for the flag, why are we not, and mental game. And I feel like I developed and matured a little bit, and so that was kind of where I was able to. Sometimes you can read a book, and then 10 years later or 5 years later you read it, and it's like a different person's reading it because you just evolve. And so every year I'll kind of go through some of those books and be like, man, you just kind of grab new lessons and stuff. And so for me, I started to grab some of those early Dr. Bob Rotella ones and put it into my game, and just started to have better scores and just started to have more fun and just be a little bit more composed out there. And so I guess that was kind of like my first time. And then I would just tell a friend, like, hey, why don't you try this with your tee shot? Why don't you try and aim, like, how do you pick targets? Are you picking targets? Like, hey, man, I see you're like super mad about that, but you missed a putt from 10 feet. The PGA Tour is only 40% from that rate. So it's like little things like that. And then people started to get results. And then I was always writing about golf as well as a freelance writer. And I would do some occasional mental stuff and mental based articles, and I always liked it. And I just kind of thought, like, I think there's something out there.
Yeah, that's it. Do you think that is a natural progression as far as, I mean, I know I did it. I did some club tossing. I did some cursing and club slamming and stuff like that. Do you find that's a pretty consistent story with people that you talk to?
I don't actually feel like it's as consistent. We just tend to stick out when we do it on the course, when you tomahawk a club or yell something good. I find that everyone has their own struggles, I guess. So some are just have so much doubt. Some just have live in fear. Some just totally shut down under pressure. Some tomahawk clubs. Some pout. Some just say the worst things to themselves. They might not throw a club, but the negative self-talk is through the roof. So like with the first few calls, whenever I like do mental golf coaching with someone, or I have someone on the podcast and I'm kind of giving them some tips, I'll always start to just listen to their language and how they talk about themselves, their game, and start to identify what is the biggest thing. Because anger might be mine and yours, but that's not for everybody. And usually what you're doing on the course, you're doing off the course as well. It's not like you're usually like Zen golf calm, and then all of a sudden you get to the course and you're a lunatic, right?
Right.
And I know firsthand. I've punched steering wheels, I've punched walls, I've definitely had anger issues in the past, and I've done a lot of work to understand it and try everything to improve that, and I'm really proud of it. But it's definitely been an inward journey, and so men typically too, we're not the most in tune with our emotions and awareness. So I think it's about figuring out whatever the biggest issue is for someone and then figuring out how we can start to improve it. So a good example is negative self-talk. A lot of times we even maybe we'll say stuff to kind of make our friends laugh, like, "Oh, I hit another three putt. I'm always good for those." Well, if you say that all the time, your brain is like, "Well, I always three putt." And so it's like those little things, but you think you're saying it in jest, but then you say it under your breath, and then you say it a couple times. And what I'll do is, like, for example, sometimes people are like, "Yeah, I really beat myself up." I'll be like, well, underneath your score, write down how many negative things you said about yourself or your game on each hole. And I remember one of the first guys I had do this, he had 37 times. So pretty much twice a hole, he was saying something negative. It was never good enough. He's always beating himself up. Next round, he got it to 30. Next round, he got it to like 25. And all of a sudden, in a couple of weeks, he went from like 37 to like 5. Naturally, his game improved. He was having more fun, and he was a lot better person to be around on the golf course. So to me, it's about figuring out what is the biggest thing that's kind of holding you back, and then becoming aware of it, and then hopefully creating a plan to adjust it. And then there's always something else, right? And so then we get into the smaller things, the routines, the course management, stuff like that. But yeah, I think to me, it's about figuring out the biggest thing that's holding the mental game back.
Do you think that I always kind of had a theory that the fact that when we sit down to watch the PGA Tour, for instance, and we're constantly seeing that top 0.001% of golf, how much do you think that plays into our perception, our expectations every time we tee it up? When they flash over and they go, well, here's, like, you had a nice picture of Tiger in the background. Here's Tiger hitting another one to a foot. But we're not in Tiger's head when we know that Tiger he played the shot, to a semi-conservative target. And if it came over there, it got close to the pin, great. But we don't know that. All we see is the flash of every few screenshots of, oh, Scheffler hit another one to 3 feet or 4 feet from 200 yards. How much of that do you think plays into that and gives us this false idea of how easy golf is supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question and a fantastic point. My first book, I have a lot of stats in there from the PGA Tour, kind
Mhm.
of helping people reset. And then my second book is like twice the size because I included so many stats about amateur golfers from Arcos and ShotScope and anywhere I could find to exactly do what you just mentioned is help people understand you are being lied to when you watch golf on TV. Like it's not their fault. They're not trying to manipulate you, but they know that you're not going to want to watch them hit it in the rough and then miss the green and hit a boring chip and miss a 20 footer and make bogey because that's not compelling TV. They want to show you the recovery shots, the amazing drives that went 400 yards, even though it's hitting on pretty much concrete and it's downhill and it's downwind, and the 30 footer that statistically has 3% chance of going in or whatever. So 100%, that's a huge part of it is having the wrong expectations, and that's why I include so much data on my Instagram, YouTube, anywhere to help people reset. Because one of the reasons my Hulk anger came out all the time is because I had the wrong expectations. So I thought that, if I hit it to 8 feet and I didn't make it, I should, I messed up or I choked. I'm not clutch. Well, it's 50% on the PGA Tour. And am I better than those guys? Probably not. So that's why I love stats. I love people tracking stats, and I love them understanding that you're probably not going to be as good as you think you are. And it's not to say you should lower your expectations in a sense. It's I want you to go out and try and hit a great shot on every single drive, iron, chip, putt. But you also have to realize that if you're beating yourself up on something that a PGA Tour player is not going to do, you're just going to be letting yourself down a lot. So yes, I think expectations are huge. And I wish that the announcers did a better job calling that out sometimes. And it can, if you're an avid watcher, it can definitely make you feel like you're not really as good as you want to be, and it just kind of set this unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, and I it really came to light for me, and this has been very recent. I had a young family member, just start playing golf, and He played his first round with me and he shot about, man, I don't know, a 130 something minus some give me's and stuff like that. The next time we go out and play, he was frustrated that he didn't score better. He already had these expectations. I'm like, dude, this is literally your second round. This is what golf does to you. And I said, if you start letting it do it now, you're never going to get away from it. And trust me, you don't want to go there. That's the one rabbit hole. If you can avoid, please
Mm-hmm.
avoid it.
100%, man. I couldn't agree more. That's just so funny. The
It's
second round, already wanting it all.
it's shocking. And I think to a certain extent, even though you've been playing a while, I've been playing a while, I think we all kind of fall back into that. We all know that there's a certain shot we may have not have hit perfectly that we could have hit it better. But what do you do to help people get out of that, to get out of those scenarios? Is it literally that easy just kind of to write down and, really, I think just take a wider view of the situation? Because you're right. A lot of people, they'll hit one to 15 feet from 150 yards and think oh man, oh, I should have hit it closer than that. And I'm like, it's 15 feet. You're 150 yards is a long way away. And it's still not acceptable man, it's got to be up there 80% of golfers that hell, it's probably higher than that, the guys I play with.
Yeah, to me, I think that's where stats come in a lot. It's nice to have all the different apps out there, and it can kind of show you shot by shot if you're gaining or losing against your handicap or your handicap goal. So I think that the like Arcos of the world and all the different stat tracking out there is very helpful. I still don't know if that's always enough. Like I had a PGA Tour winner on my podcast, and he even said he was on the PGA Tour. He's literally won on there, but he had a sheet for distances. So like every 10 yards, like what the average PGA Tour proximity is that his caddy would carry with him to remind him. And this guy's obviously playing for millions of dollars. And I just thought that was so fascinating that even a guy at the highest level still needed that reminder. So yeah, I mean, you could get, if you want to be a real golf geek and print that stuff out or have different metrics like that. But I think it's just constantly being okay with hitting it in the middle of the green or, not short sighting yourself. You free yourself up so much because if you have these high expectations and you're not going to achieve them 99% of the time, unless you're having like the best round of your life, which obviously is not going to happen every time, you're just letting yourself down a lot. And so I think it to me comes down to the stats and then also just having some sort of reminder, even carrying a note card, having a note in your phone or whatever it is, just to maybe writing a little something on your scorecard, manage expectations, whatever that might mean. But, typically it's like for one part of the game, approach shot seems to be the biggest one. But even like, bunkers, PGA Tour up and down rates, 50%. We went over some putting ones already. So I think it might even be like, what is the biggest one you tend to beat yourself up on and even just having some sort of reminder on the scorecard.
Yeah, it's amazing. As a matter of fact, a short story, I just played golf last night and a friend of mine hits the ball. We can't find it. The sun's in our face. It's kind of one of those golden hour type rounds. And I'm like, just drop it over here. He hits up there. He goes to the bunker. He's all frustrated. He has to chip out of there and he makes the putt. And I'm like, hey man, nice par. And his demeanor completely changed. He goes, what do you mean? I go, it's a par five. You got up here, you made par. And he's like, and I mean, it was like day and night. And I'm like, dude, you've been playing a really great round. And it was a really gritty round. He was really grinding around there and making some good saves and making the best out of it. And I'm like, you're really playing well. You may have a couple wayward shots, but you've really been doing good. And he's like, you think so? I'm like, yeah, I'm the one watching. I'm watching
Mm-hmm.
your show. I can't watch my own show, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to have good friends like you in your group. That helps.
Yeah, but and I think that's a lot of it, but we all play with guys that you just can't see it, and it's and
I
it's
honestly, I'm
tough.
at the point in my life where I just tell someone, like, if someone's whining about something, I just will, or if they hit it and they're whining about it, I will tell them. I'll be like, the PGA Tour rate. And people probably think I'm coming across as a smart ass, but I guess maybe a little bit, but at the same time, I am genuinely trying to help and educate because I let that ruin me for years, probably decades. And so I think it does come from knowledge and awareness. And some people, though, are just destined to be miserable on the golf course because they're miserable off the course. And you got to get rid of those people in your group. And I'm not saying like that guy is, for example, but
Right.
I have found that it is so intentional to who you play with because it's going to help or hurt you. And if you're playing with guys that, just aren't trying to get better and they're negative, it's going to wear off on you. So I'm very cautious of who I play with. Tournament golf, obviously, you got to figure it out because you get stuck with people that are exactly like the opposite of you sometimes. But that's the challenge of it, and that gives me great content for the books.
Yeah. So how does your preparation or your thought process differ from maybe you and three of your buddies getting together as compared to you getting ready for a tournament round or a tournament in general, I guess?
So the pre-round warm-up is actually pretty similar. It's just shortened. So if I'm just going out and not in a tournament, I'll do the same stuff, putt, chip, driving range, go back to the putting green. Maybe it's 40 minutes versus if I get there for a tournament, it's usually close to 90 minutes because I like to be really slow, really intentional, and not get there flustered and rushed. And where's my card at? Or there's a line here, or there's the range is already full. So it just kind of comes down to doing the same. I actually really encourage people to do the same thing in casual rounds versus your club championship, or if you're getting into more formal tournaments. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I got into tournament golf in 2017, I remember I was doing my first waste management qualifier to try and play in the big one here in Phoenix, and I got there, no joke, like 2.5 hours early. And I thought that was, I'm a type A overachiever. I thought if I got there early, the golf gods would somehow reward me. And I was exhausted after 9 holes because I'd been there for so long already. So I always tell everyone, if you are going to get into more serious stuff and you're going to be signing a scorecard, still do the same thing. If you're a guy that does well and you get there 30 minutes early, maybe get there like 40, but like you don't have to get there super early. Like I just want people to do the same thing and just figure out how you play. It's like you got to figure out your blueprint for success. Everyone's a little bit different. So there's obviously some things that are universal, but in terms of preparation, I think that everyone's just a little different. But for me, not much changes. It's just more the time intervals.
Yeah, I found myself that I will almost over prepare. And I don't mean, and I'm not even saying in the driving range sense and stuff like that, but I'll be the night before. Like if I got to drive somewhere and stay
Mm.
the night before tournament, I will over prepare, looking at the course, trying to plot my way through and trying to hit all these marks of get up, get a good breakfast, get a good, and sometimes I'll exhaust myself doing that and play worse than if I would have just rolled up, and jumped out of the car. What
You
would
can
you say
you
to
can
that?
definitely do that.
What would you
Yeah, I would
say to
say
that?
the first thing I always recommend players to do, I used to get a lot of anxiety the night before tournament golf. And one thing I do now is I do like a huge brain dump. So I'll either do an audio note or write in a journal or a note in my phone and just get everything out. Am I worried about hole six? Has my driver been terrible lately? Have I not practiced putting? Whatever it is, just get it all out of there. I feel like you just carry so much mental baggage sometimes into it, and it just makes it really, really hard to play your best because you're just thinking too much and you're, like you said, kind of wearing yourself down. And so that's one thing I always recommend doing. And then another would be definitely to have a game plan for each tee shot at least. I don't really get too granular into like, hey, we got to play from the right side. I'm not
Right,
even good enough to think about that.
right.
I think everyone should have tee box selection though. I think that's an easy one to do. So I like everyone to know, what side of the tee box, even if you really want to like geek out like I do. So I play a draw, so I pretty much almost always tee up from the left side unless there's, some sort of weird hole or something like that. So I will write down in my yardage book. I do decade golf and I have a yardage book, and I'll just go through each hole and say, hey, first hole, I got driver, left side of the box, second hole, mini driver, center box. So I just want players to not think too much during the round. So the more we can prepare, I think the day before, but not overdo it, right? So it's like kind of give yourself a window, like, hey, I'm going to spend an hour doing a brain dump and a preparation, and you can even set a timer. Once that hour goes off, you go do something. Maybe you do some stretching. Maybe you watch one of your favorite movies, TV shows, something like that. But you just kind of separate. I think kind of having and time interval for it is really helpful. And I actually encourage players to do that after the round too. So if you play really terrible, there's nothing worse than letting it linger all the way until you
Mhm.
go to bed that night. So I always tell players, hey, if you play a really bad one, give yourself 30 minutes and vent, be pissed off. Don't personalize it. Be like, I suck at putting. I'm the, not clutch, whatever. Don't personalize it, but get it out. So that way you're more present with your friends, your family, and you're not letting a stupid game like golf get in the way. But I think having little timers set up can be really helpful pre and post round.
Yeah, I found that I have to, like, if I'm out of town, I will go to a most of the time I'll go to like a Mexican restaurant. I love Mexican food, so
Me and you both, man.
I'll
Love it.
sit there with a Dos Equis and a thing of chips and salsa and my phone out, and I'll go, okay, why did I do this on hole two? And I'll just type it in there, just sit there so I can see it. That's helped me out a lot, and I think is most people, they don't want to do the journaling and they don't understand how it does help to get all that stuff out there. I try to tell my kids to do it, while they're in college, is just write this stuff down. Just write it
Hmm.
down. And I said, write it down for me, because nothing would give me greater joy than after you're out of college, if you're willing to hand me that journal. So the time you've been away, I know exactly what you went through and, how you got through it. And I can look back in my phone at my notes and, and see that I've progressed, even though,
Hmm.
obviously I still make mistakes. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think
Tony Robbins
that's
always said to
big.
be a documentarian for your life. And I think that is so important for golf. Record your swing, record your chipping, record your putting, good days, bad days, middle of the road. You don't have to record every swing. And then write in a journal, write down swing thoughts, setup thoughts, mental thoughts. Just get it out of your head. And you'll be shocked too, because a slump's coming at some point. Everyone's going to go through one. And sometimes all it takes is one little note you wrote to yourself after a round, especially after tournament rounds. It tends to be when your adrenaline is like 100%, you're as focused as you're going to be versus just like a casual Saturday around with your buddies, and you tend to extract more wisdom from it. But a lot of players will play bad and they'll just bury it. And don't get me wrong, if it's like a horrific round, you might need to do that. But there's so much gold in extracting value, good and bad, from those rounds. So I think that when you have the videos and you have the information in a note or a journal or whatever it is, sometimes all it is takes is, golf's weird. And it's like just that one little thing, like, oh man, I was picking targets like this. Oh man, I was, that one swing thought or that one setup thought or ball position or whatever it was. And I just challenge people to do that. And I think that when you do that, you just clear up your mental space so that way you can then focus. But if you're thinking 100 thoughts out there during any given round, we are in for a long day on the course.
Yeah, I think that's another wild thing of human nature, is we always record when we're not swinging well,
Hmm.
to watch that swing. And I remember I watched it was something on YouTube with Greg Rose from TPI, and he said, "Don't come to
Mm-hmm.
me and get recorded when you're swinging bad. Come to me when you're swinging your absolute best. So that way,
Mm,
when you're swinging bad, you can just come back."
love
And we
it.
can go here's where you were when you were just striping it. Let's
Hmm.
get back there. Let's see what you're doing. But I think that's a strange thing in human nature, that we're recording our faults and trying to
Hmm.
figure out what those are, but we have nothing to compare it to. We don't have the good swing. We've only got the bad ones.
Yeah, I got this from, I want to say it's a book called Unconscious Putting by Dave Stockton,
Hmm.
and he talked about doing a highlight reel. He did it for his putting specifically. He talked about this is like the old days of like VCR and having someone from the PGA Tour put his best putts together. But he had a terrible round. He watched his highlight reel, went out the next day, shot like 65 and had like 28 putts or something, like just lit it up. And I started doing that as well. Obviously, I have a lot of videos for my brand, but anyone can do this with a tripod or, one of those iRange sports stick. But have videos of your good ones and put them together in CapCut. It takes 5 minutes. Just throw them in there together. And I have one for my irons, one for my driver, one for my short game, one for my putting. And I will just watch that anytime I'm feeling like my game's not doing well, or I just need a little confidence boost. I mean, this game is, where our confidence is fragile. And if you have a nice highlight reel, I guarantee you Tiger has watched some of his highlight reel moments on YouTube, because it's got to feel good to watch. And I had a neuroscientist on, and he said this is so valuable to do about an hour before you go to bed, when you're starting to get a little more relaxed too, and then you're actually kind of programming your mind for success, not thinking about all the bad shots you hit or your bad swings, but instead focusing all the good ones. So it's like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is when I was piping drivers. This is when I was stuffing irons. Like, this is exactly what you want to do. So you're kind of giving your mind a little a hint there as well. So it really is just kind of a mental hack, but it also, I think, can just help the confidence a lot. So record those good swings and put them together when you need a little confidence boost.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it's just human nature. We live more in the negative for some reason. It just seems like that for golf for sure.
Yeah.
What you made a comment there about Scott Fawcett and Decade. How much do you think that has? Do you think that's overall hit with him and with Mark Brody? Do you think that has helped the amateur golfer, or do you think it's and hurt the amateur golfer? And why I say that is because Mark Brody's the hit it as far as you can, just hit it down there as far as you can. And I agree that the PGA Tour stats do show that, but we're also talking about the PGA Tour. And I think a lot of guys, I get with a lot of guys that are getting ready to smack driver, and there's problems right, problems left. They don't know where they're going with the ball, but yet they'll get their 3-wood and knock it down there 230 and be within the fairway. Do you think I think decades really help, but that every shot counts kind of can, I feel like a lot of guys don't look into that deep enough. Do you find that, or do you have an opinion on that whatsoever?
Yeah, I mean, I love Decade. I started it in 2022, and my only regret is not starting it when I actually
Right.
bought it in 2021. I'm like, what was I doing? I honestly don't know what my strategy was. Like, I always talk to Scott about that. I'm like, I don't know what I did. I think I just played on emotion, which is a terrible idea. And yeah, so I've learned a ton from Decade. I've had hundreds of people that listen to the podcast enjoy it. So I think it's definitely helpful because you understand that he has, a decision tree matrix for off the tee. He makes it simple for approach shots. It's definitely for more high level players, but even like you just mentioned, the 3-wood example, that's actually, there's a lot of data out there that says otherwise. So Arcos and Shot Scope, I mentioned them both in my second book. Everyone thinks, oh, I'm gonna hit 3-wood, I'm gonna play it safe. It's like the numbers just aren't there for it. For 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, the only increase in terms of percentage of the fairway is 1 to 2%. And that's
Okay.
not worth the 20, 30 yards you're going to lose.
Right.
So I think that again, that's not a decade stat. That's from Arcos and ShotScope, which is
Right.
just all amateur stuff. So I think it's fascinating because we think 3 was going to be more accurate. That's what, I've been playing, like I said, almost 30 years. So I heard things like, lay up to a good distance. That's another outdated myth that's holding you back. You're not better from 100 yards because it's a full sand wedge than 50 yards because it's a weird lob wedge. Like, it's just not going to, the math don't math on that one.
Right.
So it might feel like anecdotally, you might have scored a 50 yarder because it felt weird over the green and you remember that. But if you actually average it all out, this is not going to be the case. And if it is, then you are like the unicorn, but maybe just work on the 50-yard shot. But yeah, it's one of those things where I, again, love the data, but it's if your stats, I've never had anyone with like that I coach like have the stats to show that their 3-wood's 25% better or hitting that many more fairways. And even if it is, then again, you're 160 yards out versus 140. Your strokes gained are going to go up typically. So yeah, I love that's again where you can kind of geek out on the numbers, but just know your game. And I think understanding that each club should play a role in it. I saw, I think it was Lou Stagner from Marcos or someone recently talking about how there's one club in your bag that just doesn't get used very often, and typically it's a 3-wood.
Yeah.
And so just make sure every club is helping and not hurting your game. I think can be very, very beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. I think from where I look at it as like in a when we were playing, he just was hitting his 3-wood so much better. Not saying that the numbers don't lie. I get that. I was like, man, why don't you just hit your 3-wood down there? Because we've been looking for more balls with your driver. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to make driver your best friend. I don't care what handicap level, just prioritize that thing in practice. It's definitely, and the other thing with driver too is that it's twice the size of a 3-wood. 3-wood's just, if you're not, that's why I like mini driver for a lot of players too, just because it's so much more forgiving. I mean, I'm a +2 and I can still miss hit a 3-wood as good as anybody. So I like to use forgiving, equipment that is definitely going to help with those misses.
Now, what would you say to a golfer that's just completely wrapped up in their handicap and their score? And a lot of times that's probably what's holding them back, that they're so focused on what they got on that hole, and they get so far ahead of, well, I just made a 5 there. You know what's coming next. I've got to get that back,
Oh
air
yeah,
quotes.
got to.
So What do you say to kind of shift somebody's mindset around those types of issues?
Yeah, so I think it actually kind of goes back to figuring out, like we talked about documenting your rounds afterwards. I actually like players to create a what I call a peak performance checklist. So what are you doing when you're playing your best? Are you thinking 3 holes ahead like that, or are you staying present? Do you beat yourself up, or are you your own best friend out there? Are you talking with playing partners, or are you more introverted? It doesn't matter, but like figure out what it is that you do. And I think that is just really key because then you start to find trends. And then if you do find yourself, because we are all time travelers, right? We tend to go backwards and dwell on our mistakes. Some of us drift too far ahead to the future and get anxiety about that 17th hole that always gives you grief, or, trying to close on 18. And so that's where I always just tell players to get back to your brain has to focus on something. Like I never tell someone just don't think out there because this thing is literally monkey mind. It's wired to think. So we have to just give it the right instructions. And so that's where I always just tell everyone routine over results. I want to have you focus intently on that routine. So that way your mind has an objective. It knows what it's trying to do. And when you're doing that, you're not thinking so much about what that you got on that hole and what you're doing on the next hole. It's still going to happen. But you have to, again, go back to that awareness piece that we talked about even at the beginning. You have to become aware of it. And it's like, one thing I will do is like anytime, because I just got done with like a 12-day tournament golf bender and I found myself still doing it a few times. And I would just be like, okay, Mike, you're on the 14th hole at Rogue Valley Country Club right now. It's 5:07, or whatever. And I would just remind myself to be where my feet are. It's so easy for us to drift. One of the easiest things I learned from a sports psychologist was just wearing a rubber band, snapping that thing back anytime you're drift into the future, or dwelling on that 3 putt you just had. And just remember that your best golf comes from your present moments. You never hear guys after a round talk about, when they're on the podium and they won $3 million, whatever these checks are these days. And they're never saying, well, I was just thinking ahead the whole time, or I was dwelling on the mistake. They're always like, I was being present. I was focused on my routines. So I always like to listen to great players as well, at the pro level, just to see what we can learn from them. And again, this is probably going to start off the course because typically people are either more in the past or more in the future. You might be a little bit of both, but for me, I tend to run a little anxious. I tend to think about the future and all these scenarios. So that's why I really focus on meditation and doing different mindfulness things to check myself. And it's the same thing. Like if I'm like yesterday, I had a day where it just wasn't my day. I was thinking too far ahead, and I kept telling myself, "You're thinking about the future. What can you do right now?" So it tends to happen off the golf course as well. So you just have to catch these things off, so that way when you're on the course and you are playing well, you don't let your mind go, oh, if I do another 35, I'm going to shoot 70, or whatever math you're doing out there, and you just have no idea what could potentially happen. And golf can change so quickly. So that's why I just challenge players to find a way to get in that present moment. And typically the routine's the easiest way to do that because it gives your mind something to focus on. And obviously, the best players in the world only have one thing in common, and that's routine. So if we want to listen to the best players, we want to hear what they're doing, and then we obviously want to see what they're doing. So yeah, we can try and swing like JT or Tiger or whoever, but look at their mental stuff. Look at their course management. That is the stuff that you can apply to your game and just improve really fast.
Now, have you read any studies on anything like how long or how short that routine or a routine should be to kind of keep you? I mean, I struggle with that all the time, is if not just being where my feet are. And I try to use
Mm-hmm.
that. I use that mantra in my head, just be where your feet are. And I'm always trying to find something to keep me present in the moment. And have you read anything about that? Is there kind of
Yeah.
like a 10-second, 15-second? Is there one window better than the other?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of great resources that I reference a lot. So the first one is Golf's 8 Second Secret by Mike Bender, and he studied players that had won at least, I believe it was 5 major championships. So it wasn't obviously, I think there's like 15 or something like that. It wasn't like a huge amount, but he found that they all spent 8 seconds or less over the ball when they were like in their stance. So once the stance is built, they have hit the shot within 8 seconds. And he actually references a lot of the meltdowns that have happened in majors. Like he was talking about Lee Westwood in one of them where he was standing over the ball 13, 14 seconds. And then Nick Faldo talks about when he had that epic comeback over Greg Norman, or Greg Norman, had the really tough day at the Masters. And he said that he was standing over it forever. And it's like he just couldn't get himself to pull the trigger. So that book says 8 seconds or less. And then the European Tour did a great study in, I want to say it was like 2017. And they studied players for 5 tournaments, and they tracked like 22,000 shots, and they were able to find how much better players were doing, how many more cuts they were making, how much money they were earning by simply spending less time over the ball and having the same ritual. So they were doing the same number of looks at the target, the same number of rehearsal swings, and they were just much more structured. And 22,000 shots is obviously a lot of data. And, there's obviously someone's listening to be like, well, what about Brian Harmon or what about Patrick Cantlay?
Yeah.
If you get to their level, let me know. But they're also incredible ball strikers, and we're not. So for me, when you spend 10, 15, 20 seconds, I was playing in this tournament and this guy in the group ahead of me took 34 seconds. That is killing pace of play. There's direct studies that show the longer you play, the worse you play across all handicap levels. So that's not helping. Not to mention, slow golf sucks. Pace of play is a huge issue, both for amateurs and pros. And it's not helping you, it's actually hurting you. Imagine if you walked up there, you knew the shot you wanted to hit, you felt good about it, you looked at your target twice, and then you went versus you stood over it, you look and you're like, is this 9 or is this 8? Is the wind in here? Is it not? And now it's 15, 20. You just think too much. So we're trying to minimize that mind from going crazy over the ball. So that's where I think the 8 seconds is a great rule. But then we have to, the only way you can typically execute that 8 seconds or less, sometimes even 5 or 6 if you're really dialed, is by actually doing some homework behind the ball. But if you just get up there, laser it, and then you're standing over it, you're not really giving your mind a clear picture and your body a good visual of what we're trying to do. So then it's easy to linger and not really have it. So yeah, spend a little extra time behind the ball and just be like, hey, this is the number. This is where I want to hit it. This is the shot I want to hit. Here's my target. Then when you stand over it, you're going to be a lot more committed.
I just want to know, have you ever been with one of your buddies and you just finally said, hey man, back off the ball? Because they've been sitting over. Because I think a crazy study would be, as I used to watch Sergio as he was coming up,
Mm,
and how he got into
those,
progressively just getting longer, yeah, regripping longer and longer, longer and longer. And it's like, did your caddy not ever say, hey man, we might want to talk about this?
I
And I
feel like
see,
the fans in New York might have
oh
helped
my
him out a
God.
little bit.
Yeah. Hey, Sergio, can these guys play through? Yeah, that was like one of the greatest comments in golf. But I see it in Brian Harmon. And I see those
Yeah,
guys
it's well, I mean, they even have
progressively.
a waggle counter for him. I mean, it's like not a it's just it's to me, I hate that too because then amateurs are like, oh, that's what he's doing, so I got to do it. It's like again, you're not their ball striking. I still think those guys would play better if they had faster routines, but yeah, again, it's pace of play is such a big issue too, and it's just I think it's rude and it's not helping you. If you actually, I have yet to have one person say I sped up my routine and played worse.
Yeah, I mean, you as amateurs, I hear that a lot. Oh, I got too fast, or I should have did this, or I should have did that. You hear that a lot, but most of that has nothing to do with your routine. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'm my friends are constantly trying to get me to slow down. I'm gonna get out, get the yardage, and take the shot. I don't like to sit. The longer I sit there, I know what's going to happen. I've tried to slow down a little bit, like you were saying, just to kind of get an idea of what you want to do and kind of get a picture and then hit it. And I'm still playing faster than most of my friends do, but it's
That's
definitely
awesome
helped.
though. I mean, you're a good example and it's just needed. I just wish players would try it out. Like when you're at the range to work on your routine. Too many players just rapid fire hitting golf balls. Slow down, go through routine on everyone, pick a target, pick a shot, pick a trajectory, really try and do it so that way it transfers over. Like a lot of players are like, "Oh, I'm great on the range, I'm terrible on the course." You're not practicing anything and that's like useful in the simulator or the range. So it's like find something that's going to help you. And I just have found so much success in my own game with routines, and I just want every player to lean on them as much as possible.
So, what would you say for somebody that's getting into tournament golf? What would you say is a good practice schedule? I know I've seen some posts from you about things you didn't do, when like one of them was not practice. What do you think for somebody that wants to get in it seriously and they're an amateur and they're going to play in amateur tournaments? What do you think they need to do to be successful? Not only just in a mindset, but also in a practice situation.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes into timing it correctly. So you don't want to like I will not be working on my technique a couple days before the event. So it's like
Yeah.
have a deadline where it's like after this day, I'm not using this training aid anymore. I'm not watching any YouTube videos. I'm not doing any lessons. I'm not doing anything. My swing is my swing. It's not going to change. So what I challenge players to do is then do a lot more of that routine practice. Like I said, just go to the range with a small bucket and be 100% intentional with every swing. Take the headphones out because you're not going to have that in a tournament, and go through and hit your shots. Or if you want to have some calming music on that, does it once, that's like on a loop. It's something like that. Like,
Hmm.
do just routine work or do a lot more short game work. Obviously you can't ever have a good enough short game. Put some different challenges out there too. Like, hey, I have to get 9 up and down, at the chipping green before I can leave, or I got to make, different amount of putts, or I got to have, maybe 9 or 18 holes where I'm on the putting green, but I'll do 9 or 18, one ball, going through my full routine, full green routine, and I'm just trying to dial it in. So it's just kind of changing up because I think there's 5 types of practice. And so it's just a lot less block practice and a lot more of the competitive and the routine practice kind of leading into it. And then it's really important about not overdoing it. Another mistake I made was just trying to cram, right? And hit all these balls a day or two before trying to find the answer. It never worked. And I mean, maybe every once in a while you might need to do that, but for the most part, I think that if you go into the tournament well rested, you have a tapered off schedule, just kind of like a run. If you're doing I've done a few half marathons somehow, and you don't run your long runs that the couple days before. You're tapering off the schedule. It's the same thing for golf. We want to make sure we're spending the right time on our mobility, flexibility, doing stuff in the gym. It's not going to make us really sore. We're going on a long run the day before, so it's mental, it's physical, and it's practice. I think they all kind of combine together. And to me, it's just about not overdoing it because I know I've made that mistake the most.
So what would you say? Let's say you're going to be you're a week out, 2 weeks out from a tournament. How much time are you spending like on the putting green of just going through your routine? Is that kind of like you doing that for 10 minutes? You might go do your stuff on the driving range, then come back, maybe hit some chips, but what's that kind of look like timing wise for you personally?
Yeah, so like a good session for me, let's say it's like a week out. I think playing a lot more golf too is really key. If you can go
Oh yeah.
play more and your
Oh yeah.
time allows for it, you're going to get a lot more benefit from that than just banging balls at the range. Obviously, you don't have the time sometimes, or life pops up. But if you can't just play more golf, even 9 holes, like just getting out there and getting in situations you can't practice, I think is key. But for me, like a good practice routine, let's say like because I like to do like usually specific to putting or putting and chipping, just like more short game stuff. I don't like to do putting, chipping, and full unless I have 3 hours. To me, I just feel like I'm just going to rush it, and I know that's a lot of time. So also at that, I might get burned out and kind of fizzle the last 30 minutes. So
Hmm.
for me, I'd really rather be intentional with it and say I'm just going to do 90 minutes. I'm going to do 30 minutes putting, 30 minutes chipping, 30 minutes wedges, stuff like that. So I try and have a plan before I go out there. But for me, like a good putting one would be I might still use like a putting mirror. That's kind of the one training aid that I feel like it's not really a training aid. It's more just there to get your position, your eyes position correctly. It's probably the most popular thing you see on the PGA Tour. There's a couple other ones out there that they use, but I think like maybe you could use a putting mirror if you like using one just to make sure your setup's good. So I might use that for just a couple minutes, ensure the fundamentals are good. Then I'll just make a bunch of short putts. So I just love to see and hear the ball go in as much as I can. And then I would do a lot of 25 to 35 footers. So I'll try and find like 2 holes, maybe put a alignment stick behind them, maybe like a dime or something in front, and try and just get in that zone. I think a big mistake a lot of players make is, if I didn't get to the hole, it wasn't a good putt. And the numbers disagree with you a lot there. So it's being okay with hitting them, a little bit short for those longer ones and kind of getting it in the, 10% rule. So if it's 40 feet, if you're inside 4 feet, it's a good putt. So you're trying to do that, whether that's 4 feet short, 4 feet long, you're trying to get in that. So I will have some sort of visual, typically, like I said, a dime or maybe a tee. And then I like to do an alignment rod behind it, and I'll do that putting back and forth, and then I'll find different length of putts, or excuse me, different slopes, so uphill, downhill, side hill. So I'll do that, and then I typically end using the Decade simulated drill, where you do 18 holes and it spits out different distances. So it says like 4 feet, 10 inch, or 4 feet. Next hole is 50 feet. Next hole is 20 feet. So you're trying to simulate what you're going to have. And then you enter, were you short, were you long, or did you make it? And then afterwards, it will actually calculate your strokes gained putting. So that's pretty cool if you have Decade. And I think the Stack system has something similar like that. But if you don't have an app like that, then it's just positioning yourself and say, hey, I'm going to do a 5 footer. I'm going to imagine this is for par. And then I'm going to do a 10 footer. Imagine this is for birdie on a par 5. And then I'm going to do a 30 footer. Imagine for birdie. So you're just trying to go through it, and full green routine, full putting routine just slows you down. One ball, super intentional. And I think that kind of helps narrow the focus. So I really like to do a variety, but that's what it would look like for me.
Do you have, if you could share a story of maybe some point in a tournament, maybe you had a bad shot, a circumstance, or something like that, to where you kind of had to fall back on your mindset and to get yourself back into a round?
Yeah, I had one this year that was well, there's always some, but this one was on the eighth hole at Grand Canyon University. I was playing really well. It was the first day of the Phoenix City. It's 3 days, three different courses. It's a really fun tournament. I've always wanted to do well in it, and I was playing pretty good. I think I was like maybe two or three under after seven, and then I call seven, eight, nine the gauntlet because they're usually statistically the hardest ones. And it's like a long par four, a long par three, tight par four, out of bounds, just like a tough little stretch. And I remember I parred the first one, and then on the second one, I didn't hit a great shot, but it was like 40 feet. And I was like, okay, that's not too bad. And then I left it like I thought it was gonna be faster. I left it like 4 feet short, and then I leave that 4 footer, and I blast that. It like catches a lip, and then goes by like 3 feet, and then I miss the next one. So I just four putted, and I'm just like, what just happened? I ended up shooting 68 that day. And I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever have a four putt in a 68, but all of a sudden, you go from being a couple under to now you just made double. And I remember standing on that ninth tee, and we had to use all the mental tricks we knew about. So I walked really, really slow. Honestly, it was such a weird thing that I kind of just like laughed at it. I think that I was like, wow, that doesn't happen very often. Because I mean, I maybe have one four putt a tournament a year, and I play like 50, 60 tournament days. So it's not going to happen very often. But I walk slowly. That's the first thing I always tell players to do is slow down. We tend to rush when we're flustered and not playing good or something like that happens. So I walked really slowly. Clearly, I was going to be the last to tee off as well. So I knew that I had some time. So I took a little slow sip of water, reminded myself, hey, just a weird thing happened there. You've made a bunch of birdies. You're playing well. There's a lot of holes that are coming up, 10, 11, 12. Those are very gettable. So I'm kind of telling myself positive stories. I didn't personalize it and say, I can't believe I four putted. You suck. Like none of that. It was just being neutral, being like, wow, I can't believe I missed those. Okay. Processed it, walk slowly, drink slowly, got to the tee box finally. I was the last person. So they had already hit. And then what I like to do is remind myself of a recent good shot I hit. So I was on the seventh hole, I hit driver, and I just pounded this draw. And so I'm on nine, and I said, same shot we just hit 15 minutes ago, same shot. So I'm just like over the ball or behind the ball doing my routine, and I'm imagining just a soft draw starting off at a tree. I got a really clear target, got up and absolutely peppered one, and then hit it on a green, almost made birdie, and I was like right back into it. Ended up shooting 68 that day. So it was a really good mental reset. 3, 4 years, maybe 5 years ago, that version of me didn't exist. I would have blown up for sure. Probably went double, or I would have definitely not had the same reaction. So it's about arming yourself with so many different mental tools that I talk about, and I learn from other people on the show that have taught me so much. So it's about having as many tools as you can, but I think slowing down and just being really intentional is probably the biggest two things I'd say.
What's the best piece of mental advice you've received from either another golfer, a coach, or a mentor?
Best, man, there's so many good ones. I would say the most recent one that I've had a lot of success with, like 6 months and maybe 4 or 5 months now, is picking a really small target on the greens. So I had Dr. Izzy Justice on, and he's a neuroscientist and just the definition of wicked smart. And he kind of breaks down how the different neurons in your brain work really well with small targets, and talking about all these brain studies he did with guys. And so what I try and do is really, really focus like a lot on those 3, 4, 5 footers, finding something right in the hole, around the hole. Maybe it's a piece of dirt. Maybe it's some holes have like slits in, 3 or 4 slits. So I'm like focusing on that. Maybe it's a shadow. Just getting super, super focused on those from 3, 4, 5 feet and just staring at that. And then as soon as my head's back, I'm still thinking about that. And I have made, knock on wood, a lot of putts the last few months. And I think that's had such a big thing because I remember asking him too. I was like, well, what do you do? You ever just stand over a short putt? It just doesn't feel right. And you get that like icky feeling like I'm going to miss this. I was like, what do you recommend doing? He goes, just keep thinking about that target. Keep looking at that target. and it has done so much for my game, and a lot of my students I've shared that with. So for me, it's you know, those short putts, they're vulnerable. Sometimes if we miss those, you
Mhm.
can really blow up the next tee shot because you're still frustrated. You haven't really processed it. So if we can get good at those short putts, obviously having the right putter, having a good routine, doing all the things we've already kind of talked about, but then just finding something really, really small in or around the cup, I've just found a ton of success with that. So shout out to Dr. Justice for teaching me that one.
Do you do the since you mentioned that, do you do the small dot on the back of your golf ball for when you're on the tee? I can't
I
remember
don't do
who
that.
I can't remember who can't remember who I heard that from, but they were talking about putting that dot on the back of the ball to focus on that when you're on the tee box. I thought that was interesting. I've tried it, you know, even if you spin the ball around, you're just focused on the number.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I've heard Dr. Justice on some other podcasts, and that guy's definitely wicked smart. That's for
He is.
sure.
He's great, man. I've learned so much from his stuff. I am very grateful to have found his books, man. They've helped me a ton.
So what other exciting projects or you got new books coming out or what do you got going on right now? I know you have, what do you have, 3 books out?
Yeah, 3 books, and then I have
Yeah.
a log like stat tracking book for people that don't want to start with apps yet, but they just kind of want to learn a little bit more about their game. So, yeah, the next project that I'm working on that I'm really excited about is a golf fitness book, and it's definitely out of my element. I'm not a personal trainer. I used to be actually, but you know, I'm not as I guess I'm not the typical person, but I've just found so much benefit from the mental standpoint of when you're physically in better shape and how important endurance is for tournaments. And I just feel like there's so much information out there that I haven't really found a resource that like, here's what we do for strength training, here's what we do for cardio. And I have
Mhm.
emphasized that a lot in the last year, and I have never hit it further by far at 38 years young. And I just want to try. I've had a lot of awesome fitness guests on lately, and I want to try to consolidate it to make it simple because to me, kind of like the swing, there's just so much out there. It's like, where do you even start? Same with the mental game now. There's almost so much that you don't even know where. So with my books, and I try to just condense it so it's like you know exactly what to be working on. So that's something I'm really excited about, and I'm actually in the process of moving in about a week, and so we're going to be building out a golf simulator in my living room. So I'm actually really excited about that for some new content and hopefully some new kind of styles of YouTube videos. So yeah, always trying to keep growing and helping golfers and obviously learning myself.
Yeah, that's man, that's an interesting point you just made. It's huge is that now we have so much access at our fingertips, so much noise from so many different directions. How do you do anything with your clients to try to, obviously you want them to listen to you, but you know, I talk to a ton of golf instructors and all of them have the same common story. Well, they'll be given this guy, it's generally a guy, but they'll be given 3, 4, 5 lessons. The guy will come in, he'll be making a swing, and the coach will go, "What's that?" And the guy will like, "Well, I saw this video on YouTube and I figured it out." And then hits the ball worse or another direction. He's like, "You've been working on that?" You know, and the student will go, "Yeah." And I go, "Why not just work on what we've been working on?" Do you, how do you focus the people you work with to not do that? Because it is so easy. I mean, we have everything in a palm of our hand now. Is there anything you try to talk with them ahead of time and go, look, there's another rabbit hole that you can that you can fall into, and there's so much noise out there and so many different opinions, and some are coming at it from different perspective. And I mean, how do you get by that, or do you run it? How much do you run into that?
Yeah, I mean, it happens still, unfortunately, and it still happens with the swing stuff. I mean, I have several guys I'm coaching, and they're still always working. I'm like, what are we doing? Like I've told you, like so. I think sometimes people just have to learn on their own, and it's like you get to that point where you have to just like be very careful about anything you're consuming, whether it's the news, your shows, like all that stuff is impacting you one way or another. And so I challenge players to just spend more time and say, hey, I'm gonna, listen to these 3 sources, or like just keeping it as simple as we can. In the off season, if you're trying to explore, you want to learn new stuff, I'm all for it. But if you're in the middle of tournament week or, and then you're still on YouTube University. It's just like, what are we doing? So I think that it does come down to having a conversation at times, but unfortunately, some people are just going to kind of, keep trying to find that one magic hack out there. But yeah, to me, it's like about simplicity, right? If I'm working with one coach, I am not taking advice from anyone else. Like same thing with the mental side of it. Like, but yeah, unfortunately, players haven't quite figured that out yet.
Yeah, and I really encourage people. I've been listening to your books. I like doing audio books at work. I can kind of put my headphones in and go about my business and jot
I
down a few
appreciate the support,
things.
man. I was going to ask if you wanted any. I would have sent you one.
Yeah, I like where you're coming from because you can definitely tell the detail and where you've kind of put your own stuff in there, but you've also taken what you've learned over time and kind of picked from other things and brought it all together. And it's great to hear that you want to do that with a fitness book because I don't it's the same old story. You don't have to be the greatest golfer to be a great instructor. You don't have to be, super trained in the mental game to be able to help people get through. That's just not how it works. And I think that's great at the way you come at it. And I think it comes
I
across real
appreciate
well
it.
in your books. And I'm really thankful for you coming on. And how can our listeners get in contact with you? Obviously, we'll have everything in the show notes, but is there anything else that you want to know, you want to tell people that's out there that they can come and find your books, or do you have anything new coming out for us to be looking out for?
Yeah, Wicked Smart Golf's kind of everywhere. So I try and meet people with where they're at. So honestly, all the handles are at Wicked Smart Golf. I'm most active on Instagram and do definitely have a lot of YouTube clips that are out, and I'll be promoting a lot more on YouTube. So I think I enjoy that, not for the swing stuff, but more on the mental stuff and different course management and different lessons kind of sometimes on the course. It's hard to shoot on the course. I don't know how players do it all the time. It's golf courses are so busy in Arizona. The last thing I do is have all this time to just sit there and film all the time. So I'm always impressed with guys that do that. But yeah, all the books are on Amazon and Audible. So if you like to listen, like you said, I know a lot of people like to do that. And honestly, there's a book for everybody. So if you're a beginner, just getting started on the mental game, that's what the original book's for. Second one's all about breaking 80 consistently and really becoming a scratch golfer without swing changes. And then the third book's all about tournament golf. So it's about figuring out where to find tournaments, how to enter, how to prepare, what to do before, during, and after, using a lot of stuff we talked about today. So hopefully, wherever you're at in your journey, there's a Wicked Smart Golf resource out there, and then we'll get that fitness book out soon. But yeah, man, I really appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate the support on my books as well.
Yeah, is there anything you would like to leave us with as far as what's kind of the middle of the road guy, or just anything in general that you think is, if you left everybody with one message, what that might be?
I would say the biggest thing is to be your own like best friend out there and tell yourself great stories on and off the course. If you enjoy the game more, you're going to practice more. If you enjoy the game more, you're going to look at opportunities, or you're going to look at, situations as opportunities, not as threats. And you're going to just be a better person to play golf with. And you're going to be better to your family, to your friends, to your kids. Like everything is going to be better if you tell yourself better stories. But most of us just get in this habit. We do the same thing every day. We hang out with the same people. We listen to the same stuff, and we just tell ourselves the same stories. And so, if you want to be better, it starts by telling yourself a better story, whether that's what you're going to do in your business, what you're going to do on the golf course. So, one of the things in my second book that I wish every golfer would do is this: take the current version of yourself, call it the current self, and then map out your future self. So, the current self, write down as much information as you can. What is your average score? What are your, how do you rate your mental game? How do you rate your swing, your driver? If you have stats, put it all down there. What does your practice look like? All that. And then let's take a look at what the future looks like. Let's say the average male is a 14.2 according to the USGA. So let's go 14.2 here, but you want to get to scratch because everybody wants to be a scratch golfer. It's like the six pack of golf. Love it. Okay, perfect. Well, what does a scratch golfer look like? We'll find some stats or read some of my stuff because it's all in there. And then we know, hey, scratch golfers average this long. They average, this many greens and they do this. Okay, so we have some stats. Okay, great. Well, I'm only hitting at 230 right now, but scratch golfers are 270. Okay, I got to figure out how to add 40 yards. Maybe that's hitting the gym. Maybe it's speed training. Maybe it's working on our swing so we're making better contact. Okay, great. So then we start to just figure out, what does that next version of me look like? I am, instead of just randomly going to the range, it's like, hey, I'm training this week. I'm not just going to hit balls. I'm training my short game for an hour. I'm going to, work on my putting at home for 30 minutes twice a week. You start to just kind of establish, how does that next version of me think? How does he feel? How does he act? Who does he hang out with? How does he talk about his game? How does he talk about good rounds? How does he talk about bad rounds? And get as in depth as you can and start to craft it and just start to live those values. You have to, do it before you've done it. And all of a sudden, with enough hard work and enough time, I think people always try and rush the process. Improving in golf is just like anything. It's going to take some time, but if you stay with it, most people don't, but if you stay with it, you're going to actually find a lot of success. And all of a sudden, you're going to have to update that future self because you're going to hit that goal, and it's going to inspire a lot of people along the way. But if you don't tell yourself a good story and you don't even create one, you're just going to continue living the same life, the same golf game over and over again. And I know that everyone loves to achieve and or has the ability to, but it sometimes just comes down to just starting. And so it's as simple as taking down a piece of paper, drawing it in half, current self, future self, and figure out how we can get there.
Yeah, the only thing I'm trying to figure out now is how not to let my playing partners listen to this.
I appreciate it. I want everybody, what is it? You can all improve together. So hopefully, you'll lead the way, and then they'll be like, all right, maybe I should take a look at that podcast.
Oh, I think they will, and that may be detrimental to me because if everybody takes on this method, golf's going to be going in a great direction. That's for sure.
I love it. Well, I really appreciate you having me on, Steve. It's been a lot of fun talking with you today.
Yep. And Michael, I will leave you at that. And I appreciate you coming on, as we appreciate all our guests, and look forward to hopefully talking to you again.
Thanks again, man. Appreciate it.